We've come to the point of the meeting for public commentary. At this point, anyone who wishes to come forward with comment or query regarding the township, if you could, please state your name and address. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Molly Member, 63 Independence Way. At last meeting, I had talked about the automated trash program, and my husband and I were here for the meeting where we requested the 35-gallon can. Can you tell me what the status of that is, that exchange that we're going to make?
Once the cans arrive, which will probably be within the next 2 weeks, we'll be making that exchange.
And another 2 weeks?
Roughly or
okay.
so, once we receive the cans from the manufacturer.
Okay, so at this point you don't have them?
No, they've been ordered in, and we're waiting on them, and once they're in, there's some...
And are we going to get, I put a telephone number on it, I will get the call from the Department of Public Works. They'll give me a call.
Correct, they're going to also do that, and they're also going to notify your management company too, so they can get all the information out to all the residents.
Oh, that'd be very good, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And at the last meeting, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that you're going into the new program with the, similar to this, with distributing the garbage cans for the recyclables.
Correct.
And being that we're in the townhouse communities, we would be really looking for the smallest of these receptacles. So we will be able to have that option when, and hopefully that they will be delivered to us. Can we get the option beforehand so that
Yeah, it'll be rolled out very similar to the trash piece.
Okay.
We do understand the concerns with the size of the garages for several of the townhome communities, and we'll be taken into consideration when we deliver those cans.
Thank you very much. The other thing is, I live off of Punchbowl and off of Madison Avenue. There's quite a bit of activity going on at Crum and Foster. Can you, enlighten me as to what is happening to that commercial property over there?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
So they went before the planning board and they got all the approvals, they moved all their employees out, and they're doing a total rehabilitation of that building, and they're also taking the parking deck and they're relocating it a little bit farther back off the roadway.
But they have intentions of
They're coming back.
Coming back
Yeah, no,
to the site.
It's a major investment by Crum and Foster to bring that up to Class A office space and to relocate that parking deck.
Yes, they have been there forever.
And they're gonna stay there.
And they're going to stay. They're going to stay with us.
Very good. And what's the status of the Abbey?
It's going to be mansion in May.
And then after that, what happens to that?
Hopefully somebody will buy it.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kathy Wilson, 20 Beechwood Drive. I just wanted to say, first of all, I love the blue line on Woodland. It's a great symbol, it's a great message, and thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to comment tonight on the topic of transparency. I have 3 examples. I know you guys support transparency. I have 3 examples where, in my view, there's room for improvement in transparency. The first has to do with the handling of resolutions that deal with important actions being taken on big properties that the public clearly has an interest in knowing about. So a good example is the resolution 179-16 that came up at the last meeting, which I asked about. This resolution authorized a redevelopment study on block 10401, lot 3. That turns out to be the Colgate property. Clearly, the public has an interest in knowing that the Colgate property is being targeted for a redevelopment study. This resolution, as written, obscures that information from the public, which raises questions. Why would you do that? And those questions, in turn, have a potential, I think, to stir mistrust. When future actions on a property like this do come up for public discussion, it's not a good foundation to build on. A simple correction is when big properties like Colgate come up for big actions like a redevelopment study, identify the property in some form the public can actually recognize, like the name or the address, not just the block number and the lot number. That simple action would really help a lot, and I recommend it. By the way, there's a similar situation on tonight's agenda, which I will come back to. Another example where there's room for improvement in transparency is the timing of when the agenda for the meeting comes out. Morris Township's longstanding tradition of publicizing the agenda the day before, or at most 2 days before, has the effect, in my opinion, of undermining the agenda's usefulness to the public. It gives people no time to plan their schedule and decide if the meeting will include topics they're interested in. It gives them no time to reflect on any questions they may have or comments. My suggestion is to publish a draft agenda at least the Friday before, which includes the main topics, especially ones you know the public would be interested in. I totally get the challenges and inconvenience to you of doing this, but in my opinion, if you really do stand for transparency with the public, this is one place where there's clear room for improvement. Another suggestion I have for improving transparency is to bring some of your discussion of agenda items out of the back room and into the public meeting. As part of my research on the video initiative, I attended the meetings of governing bodies in several neighboring towns. One striking difference has really stood out to me. In other towns like Morristown and Madison especially, there's actually some discussion, some questions, some back and forth, some communication, some exchange in the public meeting among members of the governing body about various issues on the agenda. From the public's point of view, this sort of discussion and open exchange makes the meetings more interesting and informative. It adds a whole new layer of insight and transparency that helps the public understand what's going on. Our tradition is that the resolutions get presented in a block, and whatever discussion you do have on them takes place in the privacy of the back room. Even in cases where a resolution is singled out for a no vote or an abstention, there's rarely, if ever, any public discussion among you of the reasons for the differences in your views. I encourage you to reflect on this pattern. If you really are interested in ongoing improvements in transparency, this is another place where a change in tradition would be helpful. So those are my 3 suggestions for your consideration. And I did want to ask about the resolution item 19516 on tonight's agenda. What is block number 4807, lots 15 and 30?
That is the area off of Rolling Hill Drive. It's an open space field called Saunders Field, and then as the property goes out to Bailey Hollow Road and down to Mount Campbell Avenue. And it was purchased or given to the township in 1960, before there were any deed restrictions required for open space. As you may recall from a previous meeting, we authorized a grant for ADA accessible grant trails off of that.
Yes.
One of the requirements of that grant is that it has to be deed restricted, even though it's already on our roster, which is our register of open space. So
That's the reason for the Green Acres restriction?
it's a formality for the grant, even though
Okay.
it's already open space.
Great. Thank you. It really would help. I don't know what the reason is, if it's just a tradition or what, but...
So I'm going to answer this for you. First of all, I am appalled that you would accuse us, and I'm telling you, Mr. Mills holds us to the letter of the law when we are in... Let me
I'm not
finish.
making an accusation,
Let me
Mr.
finish.
Caffrey. I'm making
Let
a
me
suggestion.
finish. All we talk about back there are contracts that are in process, litigation, and property acquisition, and personnel issues, none of which can be talked about in a public session. I will tell you, oftentimes, Mr. Mills will stop us in the midst of discussing something that may fall outside the law. So there is nothing that happens in that back room that will happen out here. That's all I have to say, and thank you for your comments. Resolutions or any of that is never discussed in closed session. Period. End of
You
story.
must have some type of discussion, because there are...
Yes.
When you
Once
single
again,
out
once again,
resolutions to not be
contracts,
voted on,
litigation.
that requires discussion.
No, it
Right.
doesn't. It does not. It does not. We read through the resolutions, they're sent out to us, and we vote based upon our thought process.
I want to be clear that I'm not making any kind of accusation. I'm
For you
simply
saying
saying...
that, you did say that we talk about stuff back there that should be talked about out here.
No.
That does not happen.
No, Mr. Caffrey, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it would be helpful to the public to hear some discussion of the issues.
Well, that can't happen. Because it's information
Well,
that is
somehow it
not privy
happens
to
in
the
other
public.
towns.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to comment or query?
Melanie Hostetter, 21 Linfield Drive. I've spoken at this mic a couple of times before, but not with the same intensity that I feel now. I'm a little nervous, so it is with strong conviction that I stand here before you. I do not want to be a bystander on an important issue, the complaint that was recently brought up to the Ethics Committee.
Ma'am.
I'm not bringing
This is
them-
nothing to be discussed. The ethics matters are not subject to public discussion. I'm going to stop you right now. I don't want to have anything about it. We're not entitled to hear anything about it. We're not allowed to hear anything about
I'm
it.
not talking about that, but I was talking about just the general feeling that is around here.
Proceed slowly.
Okay.
I mean,
No problem, I'll go slow. We're all well aware of the current political climate, with the national political scene raging out of control, its negativity and its disregard of human rights beyond what was ever seen in a presidential election. The dishonest and bullying nature of politics in the highest office in our state, New Jersey. I am alarmed that this could be occurring at the local level. Can I continue? No?
Yes. It's really, I think you're just transgressing borders that really are not supposed to be subject in public discussion.
Okay. You can continue.
Yeah, please continue.
Continue, but,
I'll go slow. If you
Okay.
think I should stop, I'm happy to. My words could not convey the disappointment of this ethical incident at the local level.
Well,
That's where we gotta stop.
Right back to where you were.
I'm very uncomfortable with this discussion, I have to tell you.
Okay.
anyone from the public care to step forward?
Move close to public session, Mr. Mayor.
Second? Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.